Hello viewers, welcome to my YouTube channel. Get ready for heart-touching stories. Don't forget to subscribe and let's begin.
I still remember the exact moment my world collapsed. It was a Tuesday evening in March and I was making dinner, the same lasagna I'd made 100 times before. Our kitchen smelled like garlic and tomato sauce and I could hear my husband David's car pulling into the driveway. I had no idea that within the hour I'd be thrown out of my own home with nothing but a suitcase. For 17 years, I believed we had a solid marriage. We'd been through the ups and downs like any couple, but we'd weathered them together. David had a daughter from his previous marriage, Sophie, who was 16 when we married. I tried my best to build a relationship with her, not to replace her mother, but to be a presence in her life. Those early years were challenging, but I thought we'd finally found our footing. Sophie was 29 now, and our relationship had evolved into something distant but cordial, or so I thought. That Tuesday evening, David burst through the kitchen door with a look I'd never seen before. His face was red, his hands trembling with rage. Before I could even ask what was wrong, he started shouting. How could you be so cruel to her? I can't believe I've been living with a monster. I stood there, wooden spoon in hand, completely bewildered. David, what are you talking about? What happened? Sophie just told me everything, he said, his voice breaking. About how you've been undermining her, sabotaging her relationships, telling her she's worthless. She's been in therapy for years because of you. My heart dropped. I had no idea what he was talking about. Sophie and I barely spent time together anymore. She lived across the country with her fiancé. Our interactions were limited to occasional phone calls and Christmas visits, cordial exchanges, nothing more. That's not true, I said firmly. David, I don't know what Sophie told you, but don't, he cut me off. Don't you dare deny it. She wouldn't make this up. She's my daughter, I believe her. His voice cracked. I want you out of this house tonight. I thought he was having some kind of breakdown. I suggested we talk to a therapist, that there was clearly been a misunderstanding. But David was adamant. He'd already called a lawyer, he said. He wanted a divorce. He wanted me gone. You have until tomorrow morning to pack a bag and get out, he said coldly. I tried everything that night. I called Sophie repeatedly, asking her to tell David the truth. She didn't answer. I texted her friends on Facebook, reaching out to anyone who might know what was happening. I sat David down and tried to reason with him, to remind him of our 17 years together, of the life we'd built. But his mind was made up. In his eyes, I was a villain who'd been abusing his daughter for over a decade. The next morning, I left with 2 suitcases and nowhere to go. I moved into a hotel room and called a divorce lawyer, my hands shaking as I explained the situation. Even my own attorney looked skeptical when I insisted I had no idea what Sophie had told her father. The discovery came slowly, piece by piece. 3 weeks into the divorce proceedings, my lawyer received a discovery package from David's counsel. I was scrolling through documents late one night when I found something that made my blood run cold: detailed notes from Sophie's therapist, notes that had been subpoenaed during the discovery process. They painted a completely different picture than the one Sophie had painted for her father. The therapist's notes described Sophie's pattern of behavior: her tendency to embellish stories, her difficulty accepting responsibility, her history of making accusations against authority figures when they imposed boundaries on her. The therapist had specifically noted that she often created narratives in which she was the victim of others' actions, despite evidence to the contrary. More importantly, there was nothing, absolutely nothing, in those notes about me. When I confronted David with this evidence, he refused to look at it. She probably hid that from me, he said weakly. But I could see doubt flickering in his eyes for the first time. I didn't have to dig much deeper. Sophie's fiancé, now ex-fiancé, reached out to me via email. He'd broken up with Sophie after learning the truth about her accusations. He explained that Sophie had told him similar stories about her father, claiming David had been abusive toward her. When the fiancé tried to help her report it to authorities, she suddenly changed her story and accused him of being unsupportive instead. He'd done his own investigation and discovered a pattern. Sophie made serious allegations against anyone who got close to her or questioned her decisions. I spoke to David's ex-wife, Sophie's mother, for the first time in almost 2 decades. That conversation was illuminating. Dealt with this for years, she told me over the phone, her voice weary. When David married you, I warned him. I told him Sophie would do this eventually. She did the same thing to me, accused me of sabotage, of being a terrible mother, of trying to keep her father away from her. When she found a new target, she'd move on to someone else. Armed with this information, my lawyer filed a motion to present evidence of false allegations. The therapist's notes, the fiancé's testimony, the history with Sophie's mother, it all painted a clear picture. Sophie had manufactured the entire story, and David had accepted it without question because it came from his daughter. The divorce proceedings became increasingly ugly, but not in the way David had anticipated. My lawyer subpoenaed Sophie to give a deposition. Faced with the compiled evidence, her story started to crumble. She admitted that she'd never been to therapy. The therapist's notes were from her mother's therapist, not hers. She couldn't provide a single specific instance of the abuse, she claimed. When pressed on concrete examples, she became defensive and angry, then shifted tactics entirely, claiming she'd only told her father what she perceived as hurtful behavior. But the damage was already done, and now it was David who would face the consequences. My divorce settlement was significant, much more than I'd expected. David had to pay for my legal fees, my temporary housing, and a substantial portion of our marital assets. But more than that, he lost his daughter's trust in a way he never anticipated. Once the deposition was over and Sophie realized her father was no longer blindly taking her side, she cut him off entirely. She blocked him on social media, stopped answering his calls, and sent a cold email explaining that she felt unsafe around him because he'd sided with me. The irony was crushing. David tried desperately to repair their relationship, sending countless emails and letters that went unanswered. He showed up at her workplace once and was asked to leave. Last I heard, he had no contact with his daughter at all. It took me 6 months to feel like myself again. I moved into a small apartment that I decorated carefully, a fresh start in a home that was entirely mine. I went to therapy, processed the trauma of being so thoroughly betrayed, and slowly rebuilt my life. The hardest part wasn't the financial loss or even the humiliation. It was the realization that I'd married someone who loved his daughter so much that he was willing to believe the worst about his wife without question. In some ways, that's admirable, a father's protective instinct. But there's a line between loving your child and being complicit in their destructive behavior. David reached out to me about a year after the divorce was finalized. He wanted to apologize, to ask me to reconsider, to somehow make amends. By then, I'd moved past anger into a kind of sad acceptance. I met him for coffee once and I barely recognized the man sitting across from me. He looked hollow, aged by regret. I was wrong, he said simply. I should have listened to you, I should have questioned her story. I believed him, I could see the genuine remorse in his eyes, but I also knew that some things couldn't be fixed. He'd shown me who he was when it mattered most, someone who'd throw away 17 years without hesitation, without investigation, without really hearing me out. That knowledge changed something fundamental in how I saw him. People ask me sometimes if I'm bitter about what happened. The truth is more complicated than that. Yes, I lost my marriage and my home. Yes, I was humiliated and betrayed by someone I loved. Yes, there are moments, usually late at night, when I think about how unfair it all was, but I also found something unexpected in the ashes: independence, freedom. A life that belongs entirely to me, not to a marriage where I had to prove my innocence against phantom accusations. I built a career I'm proud of. I made genuine friendships. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought, and that I can survive things I never imagined having to survive. As for David and Sophie, they remain estranged. David has never remarried. He's become someone I occasionally see around town, a haunted-looking man who clearly has regrets. Sophie, from what I understand, has continued the same pattern of relationships and accusations, though without an audience as sympathetic as her father was. I don't think about them much anymore. What happened to me was unfair, but it wasn't the end of my story. It was just a brutal chapter that forced me to rewrite everything that came after. If there's anything I've learned from this experience, it's that truth eventually emerges. Not always quickly, not always without cost, but eventually. And when it does, the people who ignored it face their own reckoning. Mine was surviving my husband's betrayal and building a better life on the other side of it. His is living with the knowledge that he destroyed his own family by failing to listen to the woman who loved him. Sometimes justice looks like that, not dramatic vindication, but the slow, inevitable consequences of our choices catching up with us. And that, I've learned, is enough.